Ms. Peoples-Stokes in the affirmative. Ms. Robinson to explain her vote.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I would like to commend the sponsor as well. I think it is most essential that we begin the process of encouraging our young people to participate in this process. Many young people walk away from the process and say, why should I vote? I think there should also be a process in the schools that allows for their participation. There used to be active student governments in many of the schools. We should make sure that that's continued so that when our young people come to the process to go and vote, that they know and understand what the process is. Government is a process, and they need to know government. And I think it would be important for them to be able to have an opportunity that when they go to the polling site, to know and understand the process and how government affects their daily lives. The air we breathe, the water we drink, someone makes a decision, and they need to know that they need to make a decision on their life. Thank you.
Ms. Robinson in the affirmative. Mr. Pichardo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. First of all, I want to commend the sponsor of this legislation. It brings a very important point to me personally and to a lot of my colleagues. Unfortunately, across the state, we have very, very dismal voter turnout rates, and anything that this body can do to increase voter turnout, not only is it helpful and makes our republic a little bit more effective and more efficient, but also that our young people's voices are heard and are active participants in their government. So again, I want to commend the sponsor who sits to my left here and commend them for a job well done, and I will be voting in the affirmative on this legislation. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Pichardo in the affirmative. Ms. Walker to explain her vote.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I also would like to commend the sponsor for introducing this groundbreaking legislation for the state of New York. Voting at 17 years old is not a brand new phenomenon. There are many other states that are allowing for people to vote at age 17, including Alaska, Connecticut, Delaware, Hawaii, Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, Kentucky, Maine, Maryland, Mississippi, Nebraska, Nevada, North Carolina, Ohio, South Carolina, Virginia, Vermont, Washington, West Virginia, and Wyoming. 17-year-olds may also vote in the District of Columbia. So I am proud that New York State will be joining a group of very other progressive states in allowing 17-year-olds to vote in primaries, particularly because we understand, and it's also documented, that when they are allowed to do so, it encourages more numbers at the polls on Election Day, and it also encourages young people to be more involved in civic engagement and opportunities. So I proudly vote in the affirmative and look forward to seeing this bill become law.
Ms. Walker in the affirmative. Mr. Rivera.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I also rise to commend the sponsor of this. It's easy to say that this is a bill whose time has come. For those of you who remember the Vietnam War, for those of you who remember the thousands of youngsters who used to move over to Canada at the age of 18 because they were fearing of being drafted to serve in the Army. So in those days, you can serve in the Army, be drafted at the age of 18, and yet you cannot register to vote, and yet you cannot serve your city in any capacity. I think this is a great way to go because right now in the city of New York, I don't know about any other place, but youngsters are demanding that they be made members of the local community planning board at the age of 17. So the youth is getting involved. They're getting involved. Now, this is great, not only because of what has been said, but right now through social media, This country is on fire with all the delegates want to be president of this country. It's like an excitement moment in this country. So I hope this becomes law. I hope the governor signs it so that we can get all these youngsters to be able, that are involved in politics right now, but yet are not able to register to vote, so that they can do so and hopefully eventually be able to run for office at the age of 18, 19. So I think it's a great idea. Its time has come. I'm voting yes. Thank you.
Mr. Rivera in the affirmative. Are there any other votes? Announce the results.
Ayes 94, noes 37.
The bill is passed. Mr. Morelli.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. If I could give the next three bills, I'd ask us to take up, beginning with calendar number 111 on page 15 by Mr. Bronson. We'd follow that with calendar number 125 on page 16 by Ms. People-Stokes. And in this grouping, I'd like to take up calendar number 218 on page 25 by Mr. Kavanaugh.
Clerk will read.
Assembly Number 2403C, Calendar 111, Mr. Bronson, an act to amend the executive law.
An explanation is requested, Mr. Bronson.
This bill would require state agencies and other state organizations to collect demographic information in connection with the lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender community.
Ms. Cohen,
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would the sponsor yield?
will you yield, Mr. Bronson?
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I will.
Sponsor yields.
Thank you, Mr. Bronson. I apologize. Last time we talked, you were in the front row here, and I kept thinking you weren't here, so
This
my
is better
apologies.
positioning.
Yes, different spots this year. First of all, I noticed that there's been an amendment since the last time we talked about this bill, and I want to thank you. I think one of the questions I raised previously, it was about requiring the information to be publicly available, and I see the amendment says when applicable, so it would be published when it's appropriate for whatever that agency is. So I want to thank you for that. The one question I have, though, still is regarding the need for the data. The bill says that a state agency, board, or commission would be required to collect that information anytime they do ancestry or ethnic origin studies. I don't get the difference, the connection between sexual orientation and ancestry or ethnic origin.
Well, actually, what this bill is linking it to those agencies that under current law are already required to collect certain demographic information. Mm-hmm. And what this is doing is adding to that list the LGBT community.
Okay, because it's, you know, the language of the bill says every state agency, board, commission that directly or by contract collects demographic data as to the ancestry or ethnic origin of residents. So I guess I still don't understand, and I think it goes back to the previous bill we talked about as well, is that if we're trying to determine, the public assistance needs of a community, what does that have to do with sexual orientation, just like what does it have to do with ethnic background? It's based on your financial need. So I'm trying to figure out when we would need to have the sexual orientation data and in what circumstances it would assist us or help us to have better, make better policy decisions.
Sure. The reality is government collecting of demographic data helps us as policymakers and as agencies determine what programs to adopt, what programs to expand, what programs to cut back, what will that program include and the services it's offering, That collection will help us better serve our entire community, but in particular, as of today, there's no law that requires us to collect that data as it relates to the LGBT community. In my district, an organization, it's a wonderful organization, it's an organization which receives state funding. It's called Trillium Health. Trillium Health began in the middle 80s to provide health services for people with HIV or full-blown AIDS. It has now expanded its health services to meet the needs of the entire LGBT community and the unique health needs of that community, of my community. When that agency was trying to make a decision of whether or not to expand its mission as a health provider, it tried to collect data on the number of individuals who lived in the area which it serves who identify as lesbian, gay, bisexual, or transgender. Mm-hmm. It was unable to collect valid information. Mm-hmm. That difficulty, that hurdle, caused a delay in their transformation into the health clinic it is today. So what this bill would do is require the collection at the state level by agencies who are already collecting such data based on race, ethnicity, on gender, those kind of demographics. This bill would merely expand the collection to include LGBT individuals.
Certainly, I understand. Logistically, how do you anticipate this happening? I'm thinking of an agency or a firm that's contracted by an agency conducting a telemarketing, reaching out by phone, collecting this information. Sexual orientation is fairly straightforward. Gender expression or gender identity gets a little more nuanced, I believe, based on how you identify as a male or a female. How would that get calculated or brought into the demographic data?
Well, I'm not sure I agree with you that it's more nuanced. For those individuals who are transgender and identify with a gender different than their biological gender, it's not nuanced for them at all. The reality is, number one, just as it is with all demographic data collection, it's voluntary. And number two, just like it is with all demographic data collection, and there are areas with race and interracial individuals, there is, they may perceive themselves one way, and somebody looking at them may see them differently. So this is no different than those scenarios. It is how the individual identifies themselves in the particular area. So if they identify themselves as a man or a woman, that's how they would answer the question voluntarily.
Okay, certainly. And under our current laws, when they collect this information, if there's an individual, as an example, a male who may identify as a female, wouldn't that individual be allowed to, or wouldn't it be in their interest to say, when they're asked if they are a male or a female, to say they are female or they identify as female, and they put down as female already anyways?
Yeah, I with all due respect, I think you're putting much more in this than really is necessary. In fact, because I go to a rather progressive doctor, every year when I fill out my demographic form, it asks if I am gay or not. It asks if I'm transgender or not, and it also then asks specifically what gender do I identify. So I'm already filling out those forms as a patient.
Okay.
And I dare say many of us in this room are filling out those forms as a patient. The collection isn't an absolute, we don't expect it to be 100% accurate, but we do expect if people are voluntarily filling this out, they're going to fill it out in an accurate way as they perceive it. And I think the more important aspect of this is we don't currently require agencies to collect this data, so we're not getting that information. And when we see the budget bills in print, you're going to see a lot of line items going to LGBT services. When I was an advocate in the community before I became an elected official, I was the president of the Gay Alliance. We worked with Empire State Pride Agenda back in the early 90s to develop a line item that still exists in the state budget right now that is for health and human services that are non-HIV related for the LGBT community. It's a lot of money. If we were to collect the data regarding the service that those dollars are providing, and realize that there's a lot more people who are not getting provided services, then we could make a more informed decision as we pass budgets henceforth.
So far, what you're saying here is during this budget negotiation that even without this data, we are still able to, or we have been providing significant resources to the community, even though we aren't collecting the data.
We're providing, if I may, we're providing the services and we're providing dollars to provide those services. What we don't know is whether or not, and I dare say we're not, meeting the need of the entire community that identifies LGBT.
Okay, but it's also possible that when we get the numbers in, it may be smaller than what we think it is, and which could reduce the dollars.
The possibility exists. I doubt that that's what's going to happen.
Okay, well, thank you. I appreciate your comments, Mr. Bronson. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Goodell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would the sponsor yield?
Will you yield, Mr.?
Yes, I will yield, Mr.
Sponsor
Speaker,
yields.
but I will say one statement. The bill is constitutional.
I have no other questions.
Okay, thank you.
But on further reflection, thank you, Mr. Bronson. Appreciate your humor, of course. As you know, a lot of our anti-discrimination laws also expressly prohibit asking someone about the protected category. So as you know, we prohibit, as an example, discrimination against somebody based on a religion, and that statute prohibits even asking them about the religion. The theory being, of course, if religion is irrelevant to the position, you shouldn't ask. Our agenda bill that we consider almost every year has also the same language that prohibits even asking about someone's sexual orientation, presumably because we don't want that to be a factor in any potential discrimination. Doesn't this bill go the opposite direction by requiring that we ask information that we would otherwise prohibit by law?
Absolutely not. The distinction is this. The prohibition of asking someone what their race is, what their gender is, what their religion is, questions about certain disabilities, that's in the context of employment discrimination, housing discrimination, banking discrimination, and other forms of areas. This is very different. This is, number one, is voluntary, and number two, this is asking the information for data collection. It is not entitling people to then say, okay, you just identified as gay, you cannot come into my assisted living complex. So the idea is to collect the data. And, you know, the reality is it doesn't change the existing laws relating to those other areas that prevent discrimination based on the status of an individual.
So if I hear you correctly, then what you're saying is that in all those areas you mentioned, housing, transportation, public accommodation, employment, all the people involved in those areas would still be banned by law about asking about this, but those who are not involved in housing, transportation, employment, or any of the other named categories would be required to ask about this information, albeit on a voluntary basis.
The difference is what the transaction is. It's unlawful for a landlord to ask somebody's religion and then make a decision whether or not he or she is going to rent the apartment based on that person's religion. But if there is a state agency that's involved in housing and trying to determine what number of affordable housing we have, again, I'll relate this to the upcoming budget. We're going to have a dollar amount, whatever it happens to be, that's going to talk about housing. There's going to be a component of that housing authorization, spending authorization, that's going to deal with housing for people with HIV and AIDS. So, the question is, we're not going to discriminate against those people with HIV and AIDS, but we may want to ask the question, how do they identify and see where we're going with providing services for people with a particular sexual orientation.
One other concern I have, and maybe you can address this. Obviously, you've been very upfront and taken a really positive, strong leadership role addressing this issue. But not everybody, as you know, particularly those people in conservative areas, are as open and upfront about what their orientation may be. Do we create a risk that will have serious documented underreporting in parts of our state?
I don't know if there'll be underreporting. I suspect that there may be some examples where that happened, but I don't think it's going to throw the numbers off that drastically. And the reason being, our movement has been about coming out of the closet. Our movement has been about being visible. We can be visible in varying ways across our various life experiences. Without this bill becoming law, we're not able to be visible to our government the way other individuals in other demographic populations are able to be visible with our government. And because our government is making decisions regarding funding and programs and services that relate to all of us, all New Yorkers, that it is time for our government to look at the numbers of the LGBT community and count us as part of the whole community and make policy decisions based on those numbers.
Thank you, Mr. Bronson. I appreciate your comments.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank
Goodell.
you, Mr. Speaker.
Read the last section.
This action shall take effect on the 120th day.
The clerk will record the vote. Mr. Linares to explain his vote.
Yes, Mr. Speaker. I rise to commend the sponsor of this piece of legislation. I don't think there is much of a difference between the previous legislation that many of us spoke to when it comes to accessing information that helps us as government to provide and be guided by the type of service that a given community needs and deserves. The LGBT community is no different. I believe that when we look at very often at accessing services and information, very often there are trends that we can point to that are discriminatory, directly or indirectly. And one way to address discrimination or other type of impediment to access information and services to all New Yorkers is by having the appropriate information for the affected group, in this case, obviously, the LGBT community. So having said that, I think whenever one group is discriminated, I believe that all groups are also discriminated or have the potential of being discriminated. And I think that this piece of legislation, as the previous one, goes a long way to send a message and be a reminder to all of us in our position in government that we have to make sure that no one falls behind, that everyone has access to all that we have to provide to enhance the safety and security of all. So I proudly vote on the affirmative.
Mr. Linares in the affirmative. Mr. Mosley to explain his vote.
I vote. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to commend the sponsor of this bill. Just as before, we understand the importance of information and data, but likewise, as we try to further determine the needs and necessities of the LGBT community, whether we're talking about gays, lesbians, bisexuals, transgenders, those who are non-conforming gender, we understand that there are certain geographical differences and certain social differences that need to be determined, need to be flushed out. So I want to thank the sponsor for proposing this legislation, and I'm looking forward to voting in the affirmative. But more importantly, I'm looking forward to us gathering this information to understand clearly their concerns, as well as combating some of the discriminatory practices against this community. So again, I vote in the affirmative, Mr. Speaker. Thank you for this opportunity.
Mr. Mosley in the affirmative. Are there any other votes? Announce the results.
Ayes 88, noes 32.
The bill is passed.
Assembly Bill 2726, Calendar 125, Mrs. People-Stokes, an act to amend the executive law.
An explanation is requested. Ms. Peoples-Stokes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill amends the executive law to require that dialysis centers across the state of New York provide for some sort of generators, so that in case there is a Hurricane Sandy or Irene or a snowstorm in Buffalo, and a person is in the process of being dialyzed, the energy, the power goes out, that there would be a generator in place to immediately return the power, and they could finish their procedure.